My stepmom changed the locks on my dad's house while I was still inside it. He had been gone for less than 4 hours. She stood in the hallway, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "This is my house now. Pack your stuff and get out." I zipped my bag. I walked right past her. I didn't say a single word. She had absolutely no idea what she had just done to herself. But she was about to find out. Welcome back to Silent Revenge, the channel where the people who stay quiet always end up saying the most. If you are brand new here, hit subscribe right now and tap that bell. I mean it, this story has hidden money, a stolen $80,000, a will reading that nobody in that room was ready for, and a woman who spent 22 years thinking she had everything figured out. She did not. My name is Renee, and this is the most important thing that has ever happened to me. Let's go back to the beginning. Every Wednesday for 6 straight years, I drove 40 minutes from my apartment in Austin, Texas to my dad's house in Cedar Park, one of those clean, quiet suburbs where every lawn gets mowed on the same day and the neighbors still wave at you from their driveways. My dad's name was Franklin Ray Cole. He was a commercial real estate assessor, a calm, steady man who showed love through numbers instead of words. That used to frustrate me when I was little. Later on, I understood it was the greatest thing he ever gave me. His wife, my stepmom, was Marlene. Marlene cooked pot roast every single Wednesday. She always set 3 places at the table. Mine was never one of them. I stopped saying anything about it years ago. I'd come in through the side door off the mudroom, grab a plate from the cabinet, and sit at the corner of the table where the placemat was always just a little too short, like it had been cut down to fit a smaller person. Nobody did it on purpose. It was just one of those small things that piles up over the years until it starts feeling like a message. The last Wednesday I was there, my dad looked rough. Thinner than I'd ever seen him. His skin had this grayish color, like old paper held up to a window. His hand shook a little when he picked up his fork. Marlene kept saying it was just stress. Just getting older. Nothing serious. But I had pulled his medical records through the hospital portal. I still had access. I was listed as his emergency contact. A detail Marlene had never gotten around to updating. It wasn't stress. It was his heart. Marlene's daughter Chloe, 22, still living at home, was across the table with her phone in her lap, one knee up, scrolling like the rest of us weren't even there. Chloe and I weren't enemies. We weren't close either. We were just 2 people who had spent years learning to stay out of each other's way. Halfway through dinner, my dad put his fork down. "Renee, did you get the building situation sorted out?" Marlene cut him off before I could even open my mouth. "Frank, not at dinner. But we were talking about the kitchen renovation." He looked at me. I looked at him. He picked up his fork. After dinner I did the dishes, always did the dishes, and noticed a stack of mail on the counter. A utility bill, an insurance statement, and a letter from a law firm addressed to Franklin R. Cole, still sealed. Marlene swept the whole stack into a drawer before I could see the return address. "Just junk," she said, already walking away. I dried my hands and drove home. The smell of that pot roast followed me all the way to the highway. I rolled the window down and let the cold November air take it. That was the last Wednesday I ever ate at that table. My mom passed away when I was 9 years old. Her name was Carol. She had dark hair and this warm, quiet laugh, and she used to hum little bits of songs to herself while she cooked. Never the full thing, just snippets. I remember the humming more than I remember the funeral. After she was gone, my dad didn't know what to do with a 9-year-old girl who cried herself to sleep at night. He wasn't a feelings kind of man. He was a show-up-and-do-the-work kind of man. So that's what he did. He taught me to count. Every Saturday morning, he'd load me into his old pickup, gray Ford F-150 cloth seats that always smelled like coffee even though he never drank it in the truck, and we'd drive around Austin looking at houses. Not to buy. Just to look. He'd pull up at a for sale sign, cut the engine, and say, "All right, Renee. What do you think this one's worth?" I'd guess. He'd correct me. Then he'd tell me why. Square footage. Lot size. What's sold nearby in the last 90 days. Why a north-facing backyard killed resale value in certain zip codes. How you could tell a listing was overpriced just by the way the agent described the neighborhood. I didn't understand half of it, but I understood he was talking to me. And when you're 9 and your whole world just got ripped apart, someone talking to you is everything. By the time I was 12, I could read a mortgage statement faster than most adults I knew. I could spot an overpriced house from a single listing photo. I knew how to estimate property taxes just from the street and the address. Money doesn't solve everything, my dad told me one Saturday, engine idling outside a 2-story house on Lamar Boulevard with a cracked driveway and a sad little for sale sign. But knowing how to handle it means nobody can ever back you into a corner. 2 years after my mom died, when I was 11, he married Marlene. She moved in with her toddler daughter Chloe, a warm smile, and the kind of non-stop positive energy that makes every room feel good right up until you realize she's quietly rearranging everything inside it. She redid the kitchen, put up new curtains, started calling my dad babe in this smooth voice that felt just a little too practiced to be real. I tried to like her. I genuinely did. Within 6 months, my bedroom had been repainted and handed over to Chloe. I got moved to the small room near the garage, motor oil smell, bad cell signal, and a window that faced a concrete wall. My dad said, "Marlene had it really rough before, baby. Just give her some room." I was 11. I gave her room. Here's the thing about Marlene, she wasn't mean in any obvious way. No yelling. No drama. No big scenes. She was way smarter than that. She was thorough. Over the next couple years, she quietly shifted every room in the house to be about herself and Chloe. The photos of my mom got moved from the living room to the hallway, then to the upstairs landing, then into a box in the attic labeled old frames. She replaced them with framed studio portraits. Her, my dad, and Chloe. Matching outfits. Warm lighting. 3 people. I wasn't in a single one. She ran the money the same way, nothing dramatic, nothing you could easily point at. She kept a full spreadsheet, every grocery run, every gas fill-up, every streaming subscription. Presented it to my dad on the first of every month like a quarterly review. She called it the family budget meeting. I was never part of it. When I asked my dad about it, he explained that Marlene's first husband had left her with nothing, no savings, no car, barely any credit. The fear of going through that again had made her grip every dollar tight. I understood that. I even felt bad for her for a while. But sympathy runs out when the person you're giving it to keeps using it to push you further out of your own family. By the time I was 14, I had the smallest room in the house and my name kept getting left off the Christmas cards. Marlene sent them every December. Cole family on the front. Photo of the 3 of them on the back. One year our neighbor Mr. Dawson asked my dad at church why I wasn't in the picture, and Marlene jumped right in before he could answer. "Oh, Renee's always so busy with school. She never has time for photos." I was standing right there beside her. I had been home since noon. My dad heard it. I watched something shift in his face. His jaw went tight, he opened his mouth. Then he closed it. Picked up his coffee. Walked into the other room. That was the year I figured out nobody was coming to fix this for me. The summer I turned 16, my dad picked me up on a Saturday, but this time we didn't go look at houses. He drove me to his office on South Congress Avenue. 2-room suite in a small brick building, a desk that had seen better days, a window looking out over the parking lot. He closed the door and sat across from me and opened a manila folder with my name printed on the tab. "I started this for you 2 years ago," he said. $5,000 in an index fund. It's in your name only. I looked at the statement. The balance had grown to $6,400 in 2 years. I was 16. I didn't fully understand how compound growth worked yet. But I understood what it meant that the account had my name on it. Not the family's. Not the household. Mine. "Don't bring this up around Marlene," he said, and held up one hand before I could say anything. "Not because it's a secret. Because she worries about things she can't keep track of. This doesn't need to be on her radar." He handed me a calculator. Cheap plastic thing, cracked case, sticky buttons, dim display. He said, "Always do your own math, Renee. No matter what anybody tells you, you do your own math." I still have that calculator on my desk. Over the next few years, he kept adding to the fund when he could, a few hundred here, more when he had it. He also started mentioning a building. A 6-story commercial property in the East Austin area he bought a stake in back in 2003, when that whole stretch was still rough and the only place to grab food nearby was a food truck that showed up twice a week. "Someday that building's going to be yours," he said. The same way some dads say, "Someday this truck's going to be yours." I just nodded and held on. When I was 18, I started at UT Austin, stayed in the city, moved into the dorms, and for the first time in years felt like I could breathe. Marlene waved from the kitchen window when my dad walked me out to the parking lot. Chloe didn't look up from her phone. My dad squeezed my shoulder and said, "Call me Sunday." I called him every Sunday at 9 in the morning before Marlene was up. 20 minutes going over the fund balance, the building, the market. He never asked about my social life. I never asked about Marlene. Numbers were our whole language. Turns instead of feelings. Balance sheets instead of "I love you." And it worked. 6 years later, I graduated summa cum laude in forensic accounting. The fund my dad seeded with $5,000 had grown to just over $68,000. And the building in East Austin? My name was already on the deed. He'd started transferring shares to me the year I turned 18. I never told anyone. There was nothing to announce. It was just math. Every time I came back to visit, something in the house had changed. First year, my old room near the garage became a home gym. Second year, the downstairs bonus room became Chloe's art studio. By the third year, I couldn't find a single photo of myself anywhere on the main floor of the house I grew up in. Marlene never once asked what I did for work. She'd look at my coat, my car, my shoes. She assessed everything through appearances, and she'd decide I was getting by. Just scraping along. The idea that I might actually be doing well never entered her mind. In her version of the story, I was still the girl with the short placemat. Meanwhile, my dad kept quietly transferring ownership of that building into my name. Piece by piece. Year by year. Every transfer filed with the county recorder, every required tax form filed, every document notarized and kept on record. By the time I was 30, I owned the whole building outright. East Austin had completely transformed. What used to be rough industrial blocks was now one of the hottest commercial areas in the city: galleries, restaurants, boutiques, law firms. Every tenant in that building was locked into full market rate leases. The property alone was worth more than every house on my dad's street combined. Marlene converted the home gym into a meditation room the same month I signed my biggest anchor tenant. Neither of us brought it up. My dad was diagnosed with serious heart failure when I was 33. The doctors said it was manageable with medication and rest. What they didn't cover was that managing it would apparently require Marlene's permission for me to visit, but that's exactly what it became. First time I called to come over. "He's resting, Renee." Doctor said keep the stress down. Second time. "Frank doesn't want visitors right now. I'm handling everything." Third time I didn't call. I just drove over. Marlene was at the front door before I even made it up the steps. "Renee, I know you're worried. But showing up unannounced like this, that's not calm. He needs calm." She closed the door. I stood on that porch for 2 minutes. Then I walked back to my car. That night I called my Aunt Sylvia, my dad's older sister, 70 years old, sharp as a new tax return, and the only person in our whole family who had never bought what Marlene was selling. Sylvia had seen through her from day one. She just never said so out loud because my dad hadn't asked. "She's been telling everyone you're too busy to visit," Sylvia said. "Told the Dawsons at church you hadn't even called in weeks." "I've called 15 times in the last month," I said. "I know. And last week she got your dad to sign over financial power of attorney. She's on his accounts now." I sat in my apartment and felt the ground shift. Not because of money. My assets were completely separate from his, untouchable, outside his estate by design. It was something else I recognized. A pattern. Marlene wasn't just managing my dad's care. She was managing access, who could reach him, what they heard, what story they believed. She was slowly cutting him off from anyone who might tell him what was really happening. And my dad, the man who had spent years making sure I'd never need anyone's permission to exist, was too sick to see it. 3 weeks later, my dad had his second heart episode. Marlene called everyone. Sylvia. Cousins in Dallas. Neighbors. Their whole church group. She organized hospital rotations, meal deliveries, the works. She did not call me. I found out from a hospital nurse named Deborah, steady voice, the kind that's delivered hard news 1,000 times, who called my cell phone because I was still listed as my dad's emergency contact. Marlene had never gotten around to updating it. He stabilized. I drove over. When I got to his room, Marlene was at the door with her arms folded and her whole face said, "I am in charge here and you are not on the list." I stayed 20 minutes. Held his hand. He squeezed back. That was the last time I touched my dad. 6 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon in October, Deborah called again. My dad had suffered a third cardiac event. He didn't make it. She asked if I needed a moment. I said no. I said thank you. I said I'd be there tonight. I drove 3 hours in the dark. No music. No radio. Just the road and my own breathing. I kept thinking about the last time I'd actually seen him, 6 weeks earlier, through the kitchen window as Marlene walked me back to my car. He was sitting at the table looking out at me through the glass. He raised one hand. Not waving. Just a slow lift of the palm, like he was trying to hold on to something. I had not been allowed inside the house that day. When I pulled into Cedar Park, cars filled the driveway, neighbors, relatives, a woman from church holding a casserole dish. The porch light was on. Through the front window I could see Marlene in the kitchen in a black blouse, hair pinned up, arranging white flowers in a glass vase. Calm. Composed. Like she'd been expecting this for a long time. I came in through the side door, my old entrance. Stairs, what used to be my bedroom was now a meditation room. Soft rug, salt lamp, little incense holder. I set my bag down and sat on the floor. Marlene was in the doorway within 5 minutes. "You're not sleeping here." Flat. Rehearsed. "This is my house now." Frank would have wanted it this way. I looked around the room. Nothing here had been mine for over a decade. "Okay," I said. I picked up my bag, walked downstairs, and passed Chloe on the staircase. She was 3 steps up, holding her phone against her chest, watching me with this look. The look you give someone when you know they're leaving for the last time and you have no idea what to say. She didn't say anything. I drove to the Cedarwood Motor in 4 miles down the highway. Sat in the parking lot 20 minutes before I went inside. The key to the East Austin building was in my coat pocket. I could feel its edge through the lining. I could have told her everything right there in that hallway. But some things land harder at the right moment. Hey, stop for just a second. If you have ever had someone treat you like you don't matter right up until they realized you do, drop and I felt that in the comments. I read every single one. Share this with someone who needs to hear this story today. And if you're not subscribed to Silent Revenge yet, what are you waiting for? We are just now getting to the part that made my hands shake to write. I stayed at the Cedarwood for 5 nights. $39 a night. Mattress that sagged in the middle. Shower curtain with a mildew stain shaped like Florida. Neon vacancy sign outside that blinked pink every time a truck went by on the highway. It was fine. Every morning I was up before 6, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Grief doesn't care what's in your bank account. It shows up at 3 in the morning in a motel room smelling like cleaning products, and it just sits there with you and waits. On the third day, I called my attorney, Marcus Webb, out of a firm on South Lamar in Austin. Marcus talked in full paragraphs and always had a slightly crooked tie. I had hired him 2 years earlier, right around the time I noticed Marlene positioning herself around my dad's financial life. Pull everything and confirm it's all current, I told him. He read it back to me. The 6-story commercial building in East Austin. 100% mine, transferred in stages between 2007 and 2022, every transaction on file with the Travis County Clerk. The index fund, now sitting at $4.7 million, started with my dad's $5,000 and built up by 20-plus years of compound growth and my own monthly contributions. A second portfolio, equity stakes in 8 smaller commercial properties across Texas, Tennessee, and North Carolina, built from reinvested rental income over the years. Cash and brokerage accounts rounding out the rest. Total value in your name as of Frank's date of death, Marcus said, approximately $31 million. None of it is part of his estate. None of it goes through probate. None of it belongs to Marlene. I know, I said. I just needed to hear you say it. Are you expecting her to challenge it? Yes. She won't get anywhere. I know that too. I hung up and sat on that sagging mattress. Sighed, a semi-downshifted on the highway. Pink sign blinked once and steadied. My dad didn't leave me money. He left me roots. I grew everything else myself. Sylvia called me early on a Tuesday morning. No hello. Just. Marlene pulled $80,000 out of the joint account yesterday. I sat straight up. How? The financial power of attorney your dad signed last spring. She walked into First National Bank with that document and his death certificate and got a cashier's check. Sylvia, that power of attorney dies with him. The second he's gone, it's worthless. That's basic. I know that. You know that. The teller didn't. Called Marcus. Transaction had already cleared. It's fully contestable, Marcus said. A power of attorney ends at death under Texas law. The bank may actually carry some liability here. But more than anything, it tells us what's going on in Marlene's head. Which is, she's scared. She's grabbing whatever she can physically reach because she's starting to sense there's a whole lot she can't. The funeral had run about $9,000. That left over $70,000 going nowhere she could explain. Document everything, I said. Bring it Thursday. Already done. I understood why she did it. Fear makes people act in ways that don't make sense. But pulling $70,000 from a dead man's account with an expired piece of paper isn't fear. That's theft in a black blouse. She called me on a Monday night, 4 days before the will reading. First time she dialed my number since the night she told me to leave. The voice she used was the one she pulled out when she needed something, smooth, warm, sweet in a way that had about a 15-minute shelf life. Renee. Hey. Quick question. Go ahead. Your dad, did he ever mention a building to you? Something commercial downtown? Chloe overheard him bring it up at dinner a while back. What kind of building? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I've gone through all his papers and I can't find anything about it. Do you know what he was talking about? I think everything's going to be pretty clear at the reading Thursday. Silence. Then Renee. I was married to your dad for 22 years. I think I deserve to know what he owned. Then the attorney will lay it out. I don't want to wait until Thursday. I hear you. So are you going to tell me? I think Thursday is the right time. She hung up, then called back. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times over the next 10 minutes. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and listened to it buzz against the wood. 3 pulses, stop. 3 pulses, stop. Until it quit. You know what that feels like, when someone who only ever calls when they need you suddenly can't stop calling? Sounds like the truth finally running someone down. And I have to tell you something. Walking into that law office the next Thursday, I knew what was in every folder. I had seen every document. I had been over every number dozens of times. But knowing what's coming and watching it actually land on someone? Those are 2 completely different things. The law office of Caldwell and Associates was on the 3rd floor of a red brick building on Congress Avenue in downtown Austin, above a sandwich shop, across from a coffee place that smelled incredible every morning. Narrow staircase, worn carpet, conference room with a long dark table, 8 chairs, and a wall clock that ticked just slightly too loud for the silence in the room. Marlene was already there. Black blazer, pressed slacks, same pearl earrings from the funeral. She had taken the head of the table and settled in like the whole thing had already been decided. Chloe sat to her right. Gray sweater, small bag, quiet. Sylvia walked in and went straight past the head of the table. Sat in the middle. Folded her hands. Said nothing. 2 of my dad's cousins, Gerald and Ray, both in their 60s, both with ties that were about 2 inches too short, took seats by the window. Then there was one more person Marlene didn't recognize. Donna Hartley, a forensic accountant, an old colleague of mine who had been quietly helping me organize and verify every document for the past 3 weeks. She sat in the corner with a leather portfolio on her lap. Marlene glanced at her once and moved on. I walked in last. Marcus beside me, briefcase in hand, tie crooked as always. Marlene's eyes locked on Marcus immediately. Who is this? My attorney. Why do you have an attorney? Because I'm a beneficiary. She smiled the way people smile when they're sure they're about to win. Attorney Caldwell, tall, white-haired, reading glasses at the end of his nose, opened his folder. Before I read the will itself, I need to walk everyone through the structure of Franklin Cole's estate. He said structure the way a contractor says foundation, like this was the thing everything else depended on understanding first. Marlene straightened up. Caldwell read the will slowly. Every sentence its full weight. To Marlene Grace Cole, the family home at 412 Ridgeview Lane, Cedar Park, Texas, free and clear. Plus the remaining joint savings account balance. Marlene gave one short nod. Her hand moved flat across the table. To Chloe and Graves, $22,000 from an education savings account established in 2020. Chloe blinked. Looked at her mom. Marlene's jaw went tight, but she held it. That is the full extent of Franklin Cole's probate estate, Caldwell said. The room held still. Gerald and Ray glanced at each other. Sylvia didn't move. Marlene leaned forward. The house and the savings. That's what I expected. However, Caldwell said, adjusting his glasses, I am required to inform everyone present that the probate estate represents only a portion of what Franklin Cole built over his lifetime. Marlene's hand stopped. Between 2007 and 2022, Franklin Cole executed a series of legal asset transfers, all completed while he was living, fully documented, filed with the county, and properly reported to the IRS. These assets are not part of his estate. They cannot be distributed through this will. They belong entirely to someone else. Marlene's voice went flat. Transferred to who? Caldwell took off his glasses. He looked at me. Clock ticked 3 times. To his daughter, Renee Cole. The silence that hit that room was not empty. It was packed, every inch of it stuffed full of things nobody had words for yet. Marlene stood up. Her chair scraped hard against the floor and the sound snapped across the room like something breaking. What transfers? I'm his wife. I've been his wife for 22 years. What are you talking about? Marcus set his briefcase on the table. Clicked the clasps. pulled out 3 tabbed folders and laid them down one at a time. This first folder is the deed for a 6-story commercial building in East Austin, originally purchased by Franklin Cole in 2003. Between 2007 and 2022, ownership was transferred in stages to Renee Cole through documented gift transfers, every one of them filed with Travis County, every one accompanied by a federal gift tax return, every one notarized. Second folder. This is the statement for an investment portfolio held exclusively in the name of Renee Cole since 2007. Index funds, reinvested dividends, and equity positions in 8 commercial properties across 3 states. Third folder. And this is a full asset valuation prepared by a licensed CPA the week of Franklin Cole's death. He put his hand flat on it. The total value of everything held in Renee Cole's name as of the date Frank passed is approximately $31 million. Nobody moved. Chloe's mouth fell open. She pressed both hands on the table like the number had physically knocked the room sideways. Gerald leaned back. Ray quietly set his glasses down. Sylvia gave one slow nod and tightened her hands. Donna made a quiet note in her portfolio. Marlene was still standing. Both hands on the table edge, knuckles going white against the dark wood. No. Her voice cracked. No, that's Frank's money. She couldn't have. Marcus, still completely calm. Every transaction was made voluntarily by Franklin Cole with independent legal advice over a 15-year period. These assets are not part of his estate. They are Renee Cole's personal property. Marlene turned and looked straight at me. Her face, every layer of composure she'd built up since the funeral, just fell away. Like watching a wall come down brick by brick. You knew. Almost a whisper. You came to my house every single Wednesday. You ate my food. You washed my dishes. And you knew the whole time. I looked right back at her. You changed the locks 4 hours after my dad died. You want to talk about what I knew. Clock ticked. Nobody said a single word. Marcus wasn't finished. I need to just stop for 1 second. Because if you have ever been the person in the corner, the one who got overlooked, cut out, made to feel invisible, and nobody ever stood up and said a word for you, I see you. This next part is for you. Drop a comment right now. Tell me your city and the time you're watching this. I want to see where Silent Revenge is reaching. And please subscribe if you haven't. We are right at the moment everything breaks open. Marcus reached into the briefcase one final time. A single sheet of paper. Placed in the center of the table, face up, perfectly straight. There is one more item. Marlene's hands were on the table. Chloe had tears running silently down her face. 10 days after Franklin Cole's death, $80,000 was withdrawn from the joint savings account at First National Bank. It was authorized using the financial power of attorney Frank signed last March. Caldwell looked up from his notes. Under Texas law, Marcus continued, a power of attorney ends automatically the moment the person who signed it passes away. Franklin Cole died October 14th. This withdrawal happened October 24th. The document used to authorize it had no legal force on that date. Marlene's voice came out sharp. I needed it for the funeral. Marcus slid the paper toward her. The funeral, per the invoice from Sunrise Memorial Services *, came to $9,140. The withdrawal was $80,000. That leaves over $70,000 with no explanation. The room did the math in silence. Gerald looked at the ceiling. Ray looked at his shoes. Donna made a quiet note. Sylvia looked at Marlene, not with anger, not with disgust. With this quiet, settled look. The look of a woman who had hoped until this exact moment that she was wrong about who Marlene really was. Caldwell spoke carefully. Marlene, I'd strongly recommend you speak with your own attorney before saying anything else about that transaction. Chloe whispered, Mom. One word. but it held everything in it. Please stop, please sit down, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. Marlene didn't sit, didn't speak. She stood at the head of that table, the seat she'd walked in and claimed first thing this morning, and for the first time in 22 years she had absolutely nothing left to say. Somewhere below us, through the floor, the dentist's drill in the office downstairs hummed to life. It rose up through the hardwood like a small alarm that nobody could turn off. She dropped into the chair. Not graceful. More like someone cut the strings holding her up. Her hands went into her lap. Her eyes went to the table. 22 years, she said. The authority was completely gone from her voice. What was left was something smaller and rawer. I cooked for him. Cleaned for him. I sat in that hospital for 11 hours when he had his first episode. I held his hand through all of it. Nobody responded. I didn't have anything when I met Frank. No career, no savings. My first husband walked out and left me with maxed out credit cards and a baby. Frank knew where I came from. He told me I would never have to go through that again. She looked at Caldwell. Doesn't any of that matter? The house is yours, Marlene. Free and clear. The savings account balance is part of the estate. Frank did not leave you with nothing. He left me a house, she said. And he gave her $31 million. He gave Renee those assets while he was still alive. They were his to give. Sylvia had been patient long enough. Frank loved you, Marlene. He really did. He chose to marry you and he chose to stay. But he also loved Renee. And he knew, I knew, that you would never willingly share anything with her. So he made sure she was taken care of before it ever came to this room. Marlene stared at her. You knew about this? Frank told me years ago. He said, Sylvia, Marlene will never let Renee have anything unless it's already signed and done. He wasn't being harsh. He was just being honest. Chloe reached over and put her hand on her mom's arm. Marlene didn't look at her. I didn't know, she whispered. And right there, that was it. The most honest sentence she'd said in 2 decades. She didn't know because she'd never looked. She'd never once considered that the quiet girl who washed the dishes every Wednesday and drove home smelling like pot roast might have been the most important person in the room the whole time. I stood up. Every face in the room turned toward me. I didn't come here to take anything from anyone. Everything in my name has been mine for years. I came here so that every person at this table knows the full truth. Not part of it. All of it. I looked at Marlene. She didn't look away. From today on, I won't be calling. I won't be showing up. If you or Chloe ever need to reach me, you go through Marcus. I picked up my bag. Turned to Sylvia. Thank you, Aunt Sylvia. She gave me one nod. That was all we ever needed, same shorthand my dad used. A nod. A squeeze. A hand lifted in the air. I walked to the door. Teddy. No rush. No looking around. To threshold I stopped. Turned, just enough to see Marlene's profile at the head of that table. You said the house is yours. Keep it. I never needed it. I closed the door. Not a slam. Not a soft pull. A firm, clean close, the way my dad always said a good deal should end. Quiet. Deliberate. Done. The elevator was out. Marcus and I took the stairs. He walked beside me without saying anything. He knew when silence was the right move. At the bottom, Gerald caught up and held out his hand. His voice came out a little rough. Your dad would have been so proud of you, Renee. He would have told me to check the portfolio before I hit the highway, I said. Gerald almost smiled. Yeah, he really would have. He and Ray walked to their car. I walked to mine. Coffee shop across the street smelled like espresso and something warm and sweet and had nothing whatsoever to do with anything that had just happened upstairs. I sat in the car for a while. The lot was almost empty. I stared at the brick wall across the way. There was a drain pipe running down the side with a rust stain shaped exactly like a question mark. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. And then I cried. Not for the money. Not for Marlene. Not for 22 years of short placemats and missing Christmas cards and a bedroom that went from a gym to a meditation room. I cried for my dad. Because he had seen this day coming long before I did, the way he could see what a neighborhood would become before anyone else noticed. He had prepared for it the only way he knew how. Not with arguments. Not with warnings. With documents. With 15 years of patient, quiet transfers, each one a small act of love dressed up as paperwork. He couldn't change who Marlene was. He chose to love her anyway. And I've made peace with that. But he made sure that when the day came, and he always knew it would come, I'd be standing on ground that nobody could pull out from under me. I wiped my face. Started the car. On the way out, I drove past the building. My building. 6 stories of glass and brick on a corner in East Austin, small brass plate near the entrance that said Cole Commercial. I never changed the name. Never planned to. I pulled over and looked up at the lights on the 4th floor. Some tenant working late, no idea that the woman idling below them owned every ceiling above their head. I sat there a few minutes. Then I drove home. 3 weeks later, Marlene hired an estate attorney named Warren to look for a way to fight the transfers. He called her back within a week. There's no case here. These transfers happened over 15 years with a lawyer involved at every step. No pressure, no manipulation, no question about your husband's mental state. Franklin Cole knew exactly what he was doing every time he signed. She pushed back. He stayed firm. He left you the house, no mortgage, yours free and clear. He left you the savings. He did not leave you with nothing. He left me with nothing compared to what he gave her, she said. Warren didn't have an answer for that. The $70,000 overage from the unauthorized withdrawal was handled separately. Marcus sent a formal letter. Her attorney told her to pay it back. The check arrived at Marcus's office within 10 days. Chloe texted me a few weeks later. First message she had ever sent me in her life. I didn't know what she was going to do that night. I'm really sorry, Renee. I read it twice. Didn't text back. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say to someone who had watched me walk down those stairs with a bag in my hand and hadn't found a single word. She sent a handwritten letter a few weeks after that. She wrote about job hunting, about the house feeling strange, about wishing things had gone differently when we were growing up. I read it. Set it on the counter. Let it sit there for 2 weeks. Put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready. And I've finally learned, not being ready yet is not the same as not caring at all. 6 months after the reading, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the 9th floor of a building in East Austin, 4 blocks from my commercial building, with hardwood floors that creaked near the bathroom door, east-facing windows that caught the first light every morning, and a real kitchen with actual counter space. That spring I launched my own firm. Called it Cole Compliance Group. Not for sentimental reasons, my dad would have rolled his eyes at sentiment. For origin. Everything I know about numbers, about patience, about building something real while nobody's paying attention, it all started in a gray pickup on a Saturday morning with a man who couldn't say I love you out loud but said it 100 different ways. Sylvia came for dinner once a month. Sourdough from a place near her house in Round Rock, and a bottle of wine she always claimed was on sale, which it never was. We ate at the small table by the window and talked about my dad, not with sadness, just with honesty. The way you can only talk about someone when you knew them exactly as they were. He used to say you were the only person in the whole family who really understood compound interest, she told me one night. He said that about everyone he liked, I said. She smiled. No. Just you. I kept one thing from all those years. Not the house. Not the furniture. Not a single photo Marlene had curated so carefully across 2 decades. I kept the calculator. Same one my dad handed me when I was 16. Cracked plastic case. Yellowed buttons. Display that flickers a little when you hit the equals key too hard. The brand name on the back is worn completely off. There's a strip of tape holding the battery door shut, same piece my dad stuck on there when the hinge broke during one of our Saturday drives. Sits on my desk beside my laptop every single morning. One Tuesday a few months after everything, I picked it up. Warm from the sun coming through the east window. I typed in the number. 31 million. I sat and looked at it for a long time. The screen just held it. No reaction. No applause. No judgment. Just a number. The same way it had always just been a number, on those Saturday drives in my dad's office with the lamp on, in the motel room at 3 in the morning with the pink neon blinking outside. Just math. Clean, patient, honest math. My dad told me once, engine idling outside a house on Lamar with a cracked driveway. Money doesn't solve everything. But knowing how to count means nobody can ever back you into a corner. He was right. Nobody caught me off guard. Not the locked door. Not the 3 chairs at the funeral. Not the pearl earrings or the expired paperwork or the look on Marlene's face when Marcus opened those folders. But I would trade every dollar on that screen to hear my dad say, "Good job, Renee," one more time. I turned the calculator off. The screen went dark. I set it back in its spot, same spot every morning, and picked up my coffee and opened my laptop and started the day. Side East Austin was waking up. Joggers. Dog walkers. A woman in a red jacket pushing a stroller through the last of the fall leaves. Morning light coming through the east window, landing exactly where I like it. The floor creaked near the bathroom door. The sourdough Sylvia brought on Sunday was still on the counter, wrapped in a cloth napkin. Enough left for one more piece of toast. This was my life. I built it. And it is more than enough. My name is Renee Cole. My dad didn't leave me money. He left me the only thing that never loses its value. The ability to never need anyone's permission to exist. If this story hit you somewhere real, if you've ever been the person in the corner, the one who kept quiet and kept going while everyone counted you out, please hit that like button right now. Costs you nothing. Means everything for this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. You already know who that person is. And if you're not subscribed to Silent Revenge yet, hit that button. Because the next story we're dropping makes this one look like a warm-up. Drop a comment. Tell me your city and the time you're watching. I want to see exactly where Silent Revenge is reaching. I read every single comment. Every one. See you in the next one.